Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. I am so excited you're here. Welcome to the 2024 State of the Region. I'm William Murdoch, the Executive Director of the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission. And the 900 people here, you're all our friends, and you can call us MORPC. Thanks for being here. What a time it is to be in Central Ohio. We're growing. We're serious about planning, we're making investments in our future, and we're building that foundation to connect our communities to a better quality of life. This is what today is all about. I'm so excited for you. We have Majora Carter as our keynote. You're going to hear her insights into building communities. We also have transformative projects charting the region future that we're going to talk about. The results of a major community survey, and we're going to celebrate some incredible regional leaders. Today only happens with your support, though, and I want to give a special thanks to our sponsors, especially HNTB and the Franklin County Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And I want you to know I'm so inspired by our team of professionals at MORPC. There's so many of them here. They've worked so hard, led by Amanda McEldowney. It's because of them that we can enjoy today and serve you all year long. So let's give them a round of applause for their great work. So at its heart, MORPC is Central Ohio working together. 87 member cities, townships, counties, villages, and more. We're rural, we're suburban, we're urban, places as small as Brown Township and as large as Delaware County. It's Hebron, Mount Vernon, Plain City, and so many more. And these communities' leaders inspire us with their service. They honor us with their dedication to our board. And I have to tell you at MORPC, we believe in public service. It's honorable, and it certainly isn't easy. So let's show all of these officials here today our appreciation for what they do. And it's with a note of sadness that our hearts go out to our friends in Logan County and elsewhere around the region who can't join us today. They're dealing with tragedy and damage to their communities and stepping up to try to help manage that grief. Let's take a moment of silence to honor them and those lives that were lost in yesterday's storms. Thank you. So you know we're growing. Central Ohio, we're growing into a world-class region, well over 3 million people by 2050, maybe sooner. And if you're here, that means you're a leader, you're helping to shape our future. And I know that many of you are feeling that impact of growth and change. And we know communities across the region are having difficult conversations about housing and transportation. These things are urgent and they're hard. Preparing for that future takes vision, patience, and collaboration. And I want you to know you're not alone. Our team at MORPC is here for you. But also the people sitting at your table are amazing people. And they are the reason, you are the reason that Central Ohio has momentum. And you're gonna need your neighbor for your work, the work that's ahead. So I wanna do this. I want you to turn to the person next to you. I want you to thank them, shake their hand, say a nice word, share a dessert. All right, well, make sure you get their name and maybe a business card. And whatever you do, don't steal their dessert because they'll remember that, okay? All right. So today's theme, I love this. This is what this event is about, is connecting us together. Today's theme is connecting communities, transforming housing and transportation. Simply put, what we do today on transportation and housing, it's absolutely critical. And we know that connecting communities means investments and policies that are big enough to help every corner of the region. We can build on our strengths and we can stay true to our character. And if we all work together, if you pull those neighbors together, we can truly set the stage for some transformational projects. We also know that connecting communities brings abundant benefits, access to jobs, education, housing, and transportation. So the benefits of growth are felt in every neighborhood and every hometown. And if we do this, when we work together, we can grow better as we get bigger. And this is why you have a MORPC, to help us get ready for Central Ohio's future. And we call it our strategic framework. Our top goal is to create an environment for prosperity. You know this, MORPC helps communities plan for transportation, the environment, we offer technical assistance, we work on clean air and water, we help tackle the housing crisis, and members of my team here stabilize hundreds of homes every year. We also drive investment with direct funding for infrastructure and strategies to help you access federal, state, and private dollars, and we lead with the Central Ohio Defense Group and a new economic development district. We also build value for our member communities by bringing them together with the things you count on us for: objective data, mapping, best practices in planning, and even practical events like Money Mondays and rural forums. And we also pay it forward with trainings, university partnerships, and connecting youth to public service. We want to put our values into action. This is how we do that. This framework, it helps communities address all of those issues that you're facing: housing, water, building transportation network to connect the whole region to each other and to jobs. So I want to get into the details. So speaking of connecting communities, we recently received some great news. We've been working to bring passenger rail back to Central Ohio for a while now, and I am thrilled to say that effort is officially on track. Yes, we should applaud for that. Two proposed routes through the heart of Central Ohio received federal funding in December to advance to the next level of planning. You can see it on a map there. We could be connected to Chicago, the East Coast, Pittsburgh, and other regions of Ohio. This investment could pay dividends. And we know this, a recent All Aboard Ohio study showed significant benefits in employment and development. And there is robust support. If you remember our Leaders Listen survey last year, 90% of the region supports restoring passenger rail. And if you talk to business leaders, and I know there's some here in the room, they'll tell you this is a smart way to compete for talent and investment. We're also working to add more transportation options for every Central Ohio community. It doesn't matter if you're rural, suburban, or urban. And a really exciting way to do this is the Link Us Mobility Initiative. Yeah, this is great, yeah. Thank you, Council Member. Link Us is a commitment to connect people to jobs, services, and housing in the heart of the region. So you may ask, what is Link Us? This is visionary and bold, but I want to tell you, I think it's pretty simple. First, it builds real mass transit along 5 routes with zero-emission vehicles that feel and perform like rail. It also creates improvements that touch most of us: better expanded bus service, better connections to rural systems, and innovative on-demand services. And finally, if you didn't know this, this is incredible. It could create 300 miles of new trails and sidewalks in 43 communities in Central Ohio in just 5 years. That's amazing. If we do this right, when we do this right, Link Us will quickly add options to all the places we need to get to: work, doctors, places of work, worship, childcare, and more. It could also very practically reduce those extra 50 hours a year we're stuck in traffic, all while strengthening in our neighborhoods and attracting businesses. And Link Us received amazing news on Wednesday, and this took so many partners to support CODA, so much of our congressional delegation. We were awarded a $42 million Reconnecting Communities grant to jumpstart efforts along West Broad Street. This could build a 9-mile route, 17 new stations, a new park and ride center. It'll help speed travel, attract investment, create jobs and housing. This is moving. This is a really exciting effort. We know that our efforts to connect communities should lift everyone up too. And I want to emphasize this. This is why MORPC, the Columbus Partnership, and CODA are laser focused on a more equitable future through something we call a Justice 40 strategy for federal investment. It's very important to address the barriers faced by historically disadvantaged and low-status communities, and it's touching so many of our efforts: complete streets, safety, environmental conservation, economic development, trail towns, and more. And there's a great example of paying it forward that connects to this. We partner every year with the Easton Foundation and Ohio State Sustainability Institute and Knowlton School to support top students in planning and sustainability. We call them Easton Future Vision Fellows, and we support them to work on innovative planning projects around the region. Every year, one is selected as a top student. All of them are here today, so I want them to stand up. If you could stand up. The winner is a Fulbright Scholar and OSU PhD student, Mara Villaseca. Let's give them all a round of applause for their extraordinary work. And these folks will be in the looking for employment soon, so you're going to want to meet them if you can today. Now, you know that MORPC plans for transportation with rural and urban communities, and this May, we'll be adopting our latest Metropolitan Transportation Plan. This is a comprehensive vision for transportation with, get this, $35 billion in projects over the next 25 years. And this plan includes $13 billion for transit investments, which is the highest commitment ever our region has made, and about $2 billion for bike and pedestrian facilities that stand alone. And there's major investments in sustainability, trails, blueways, enhancing recreation, connecting neighborhoods, and even clean energy options. And in fact, MORPC and partners were recently awarded $2 million to improve EV charging infrastructure across the region. This is a major change. Central Ohio is on the cusp of what I think is a game-changing moment. We're talking about major investments in our entire transportation system, bold moves like Link Us, passenger rail, significant work from Central Ohio Greenways and Rapid 5 on trails. In just a minute, you're going to hear Majora Carter say something that I want you to take home with you. You don't have to move out of your neighborhood to live in a better one. This is what we're talking about. We're talking about investments that add value to where we live, no matter where we live, getting better as we grow bigger. You can't plan to do any of this, though, without considering housing. And this is an urgent issue for all of us in Central Ohio. You know this if you read the news. We're at the epicenter of a hot housing market, no signs of cooling. Zillow recently ranked Columbus as the country's third hottest housing market. The New York Times this week said we had the fourth highest increase in rents. Many are struggling with rent increases and finding housing. The Harvard Joint Center for Housing Studies recently said half of renters spend more than 30% of their income on rent. That's unacceptable. And when we look around Central Ohio, we know that we're building much less housing than other similar regions, and shockingly less than 20 years ago. We're building less housing than 20 years ago when we had about 500,000 fewer people. But I know that there's signs of hope, and there's really good community work that's being done on this. You know that we did a regional housing strategy recently to show that there's a need to build more, do more, and be more creative, and give those tools to communities to do it. And when you look around the region, I know a lot of you are working on this, but Reynoldsburg and Columbus have overhauled or are overhauling their zoning codes. Many others are updating their development rules for the first time in decades. Columbus is doing a zone-in effort that focuses on equitable, transit-oriented development. And if you look at Whitehall, they're innovating with cargo containers, and Newark and Bellefontaine are working on award-winning creative revitalization projects. MORPC even created a new national level best practices group. This is a lot of work that's going on, and it's important too because housing affects our health. A great way to get in front of the social determinants of health is not just to provide housing, but to improve the existing homes for our most vulnerable neighbors. And I want to shout out again MORPC's residential services team. They do just that. If you didn't know this, our team weatherizes and repaired more than 2,500 homes in the last 5 years. And we studied this. Those folks who live in these homes, these families can stay in their homes. They're much safer, and they can save over $300 a year on utilities. That team is here. They are crawling through basements. They're working with people in crisis. Can we give them a round of applause for the work that they do? And in just a minute, you're going to hear the latest Leaders Listen survey, which will tell us what Central Ohio residents are thinking and feeling about housing. So just like housing, we all know how important water is to our region. This has long been our competitive advantage, but we all are feeling the pressures of growth that urgently demand we do more. And I wanted to share that together with Ohio EPA and many, many partners, we just kicked off a first-of-its-kind water study for all of Central Ohio. We're going to look at those things that communities and businesses are looking at: future supply and demand, gaps, investment recommendations, innovation around stormwater. And we're going to make sure that this is connecting sustainability to economic development. And I know many of our friends from economic development are here: One Columbus, Grow-Licking County, Fairfield 33, many folks from MODE. No matter who you talk to, all of them will tell you that all of what I'm talking about is connected to economic development, and we agree with them. And I want you all to know we're doing more than ever to support their work and connect it to the resources and infrastructures and major employers and institutions that we need. And a major way that we're doing this, we recently achieved an elite federal designation as an economic development district. We are the largest region in Ohio to do so. This is just getting started. It unlocks new funding for communities and businesses alike. We also know that communities need practical help to deal with growth. And this year, and I know some of you have already participated in it, MORPC created a community-based planning assistance program. This is a suite of programs that streamline your proposal processes. It gives direct professional and technical assistance for local planning. We pay it forward with new talent, over 50 interns placed across the region. We set up a national partnership with Planning 2050 to get access to their tools and best practices and data. What we've done is we've created a one-stop shop for communities who need help with planning for growth. Now, you know I get really excited about this because there is so much good work happening around Central Ohio. This is just a sample of the work that we're doing with you. And I want to challenge us as we're listening to our speakers today, as we're talking to those people next to us, let's work harder to spark more collaboration, create more options and more connections. And as I close here, I want you to know that our team at MORPC, yes, we're excited to work with you, but we are humbled to work alongside you. We believe in what you're doing for your communities. We're grateful for your partnership, your ideas, and your drive to make Central Ohio an even better place to live. So thank you again for being here today. All right, so let's move into today's program. At last year's State of the Region, MORPC launched Leaders Listen. This is a survey series to measure the pulse of Central Ohio's residents on major regional topics. And this continues today as we focus on housing. So with our partners, the Columbus Dispatch and Measurement Resources, we're going to learn the highlights from our latest Leaders Listen survey. So let's welcome to the stage MORPC's board chair and Dublin Mayor Chris Amorous-Grooms and the executive editor Mike Shear from the Columbus Dispatch.
Thank you, William. Last year, MORPC launched Leaders Listen, an ongoing survey series designed to capture perceptions of Central Ohio residents on critical topics. Building upon this successful series, we are excited to unveil the preliminary highlights of the latest survey focused on housing and connectivity. Along with our partners, the Columbus Dispatch and Measurement Resources, thanks to this partnership, we secured a broad community engagement for our survey from a diverse range of participants throughout our growing region, including Spanish-speaking and Somali-speaking residents. We believe this partnership underscores our commitment to inclusivity and to community-driven decision makers.
Thank you, Mayor Amorous-Grooms. The Columbus Dispatch also understands the importance of reaching a diverse spectrum of residents across Central Ohio, amplifying voices from all walks of life and communities throughout our region. We know from the stories we cover that affordable and plentiful housing options are the cornerstone of a thriving community. It fosters stability, economic prosperity, and promotes health equities and safety. Housing availability takes on greater significance as our region grows, and engaging residents and businesses is critically important as the communities plan for the needs of the region. Recognizing these realities, it's appropriate that the latest survey in the Leaders Listen series highlights residents' views on current and future housing needs. This focus will help guide and inform regional efforts to grow Central Ohio's housing stock in tandem with its blossoming economy an influx of new residents. Feedback was obtained from more than 1,500 residents across 151 zip codes within our 15-county region. So let's look at a few highlights from the survey's preliminary results.
Okay, survey responses illuminate the difficulties residents encounter to secure housing that meets their needs and stays within their budgetary constraints. Shockingly, less than 4 out of 10 individuals, just 38%, say that they can find suitable housing options in Central Ohio that they can afford. With a shortage of housing stock, vacancy rates have plummeted over the decade. This scarcity is not only driving up costs, but intensifying concerns regarding affordability and availability in the region, as our growth outpaces most cities nationwide. It is not surprising that as incomes rise, so does the likelihood of individuals reporting satisfaction with the housing market. It is not until you look at the households earning $100,000 or more that the majority agrees the Central Ohio housing market meets their needs. We also learned that within 9 of the 15 Central Ohio counties, anywhere from approximately 53 to 85% of responders who do not currently own their home indicated they preferred to own instead of rent a home if they could. Across every county in the 15 region, 57% said that they would prefer to own. To the extent the survey reflects the region, this suggests that there are 625,000 Central Ohio residents who would prefer to buy a home if the cost of housing was not a barrier.
That's a staggering number, Mayor. A deeper dive into the survey exposes the harsh realities faced by many residents. More than 55% of respondents admitted to making sacrifices or missing payments on essential items to afford their rent or mortgage. Specifically related to groceries and food and household goods, almost half of households earning less than $35,000 annually struggle to provide for their families. Alarmingly, sacrificing other basic needs such as clothing, utilities, and medical care also emerged as common hardships, underscoring the critical intersection between housing instability and health concerns. 20% of households earning less than $50,000 annually report sacrificing doctor's visits, medical procedures, or health insurance. Those in slightly higher income brackets are also showing signs of financial strain. Households earning between $50,000 and $75,000 per year report sacrificing or being behind on payments for food, home repairs, clothing, medical care, and credit cards or short-term loans.
Considering these findings, it's evident that Central Ohio urgently needs comprehensive strategies to address the housing crisis. The implementations of initiatives like Link Us, aimed at enhancing transit and connectivity, holds promise in alleviating housing burdens and enhancing overall quality of life for residents. When asked about Link Us, just under half of Central Ohio residents indicated that they believe Link Us will be moderately to extremely helpful to them personally. However, as survey respondents considered how helpful the plan for extended transit and connectivity would be for others they know, or Central Ohioans generally, many more expect that it will be quite helpful. 62% believe that Link Us would be moderately to very or extremely beneficial to the people that they knew. 82% believe Link Us would be moderately to extremely beneficial to the community at large. Perceptions of who will benefit the most from Link Us varied, somewhat by household incomes, with those earning the least reporting it would be the most helpful for them personally. Interestingly, when it comes to beliefs on how helpful Link Us will be to Central Ohioans generally, higher earning households were more likely to report seeing benefits for the region.
Despite the identified needs and preferences of the community, there remains a significant gap in satisfaction with how local leaders are addressing housing needs. More than half of respondents expressed dissatisfaction with current efforts, highlighting the urgency for collaborative and innovative solutions from policymakers, developers, and community stakeholders alike. When asked what the region should prioritize, attainable housing options for lower and middle income residents ranked the highest, followed closely by regional action toward more walkable communities, additional single-family homes, more senior-centered housing, and greater flexibility in the type of housing allowed on properties. It's clear that there's still more work to be done to foster an environment where the region's leaders are listening to and engaging with residents on housing policy. As the region grows, prioritizing affordability, accessibility, and inclusivity in housing policies and initiatives will help to pave the way for a more prosperous future for all residents. We look forward to seeing the complete findings of the survey, so be sure to follow MORPC on social media for more information or visit morpc.org/leaderslisten to view the results and past survey findings.
Thank you to all of our partners in this effort. It certainly is a large undertaking. Community engagement and feedback such as this will help better inform all of us as we pursue housing initiatives in our community. If you haven't shared your thoughts yet, the survey is open until March the 22nd. And thank you for your time.
Thank you again, Mayor Amos-Grooms and MORPC's board chair and Michael Scheer from the dispatch. We're really grateful for these insights. This represents every corner of the region, and I think this is pretty compelling as we're all thinking about how urgent the housing work that we're doing is. Well, next, I have the distinct honor of introducing today's keynote speaker, Majora Carter. Let me tell you a little bit about Ms. Carter. She's a real estate developer and urban revitalization strategy consultant. She's also the recipient of the prestigious MacArthur Fellowship and a Peabody Award-winning broadcaster, and notably a best-selling author. And she's responsible for creation of numerous economic development, technology inclusion, and green infrastructure projects, policies, job training. In addition to all of that, she lectures at Princeton's Keller Center too. Her tireless efforts have left an indelible mark, partnering on projects, solving challenges to build new economic growth. She's someone who's been described as somebody who, quote, leads change you can see on the ground and in the hearts and minds of the people needed to support progress. And she's an inspiration to so many of us, myself included. Please join me in extending a warm welcome to our keynote, Majora Carter.
I literally just had a wardrobe malfunction. Sorry about that. Give me a sec. Holy lordy, Miss Claudie. Sorry about that. But thank you. I'm so happy to be here. It's been 6 years. I've actually addressed y'all back in 2018. And it is really good to be back here, and again, specifically because of all the work that I know you've been doing. So before I came up on stage, William gave me a Buckeye for the Buckeye tree and told me about the tradition that, you give them as a tradition for good luck. And I was like, actually, I was hoping they were like the little Buckeye peanut butter candies from Williams, and I was like, oh, that's good too. But really, what's super exciting is about being here is that knowing that y'all are in such an amazing moment in time. And it's not luck you need, because that'll carry you, but so far. But what is going to carry you is the planning that is going to get you all the things that y'all deserve. From transportation and infrastructure and economic development, the great housing. You've got the components on the ground, Linkus, Rapid 5, Intel's coming. All those things are happening. And so how we get to the next step so that your dreams are fully realized, again, it's not luck. It is the planning. And, nobody plans to fail. They fail to plan. And that is what is going to be happening here. So planning for the well-being of your communities, which is something I definitely try to know a little bit about and do through my own work, is the kind of thing that makes me feel like, you guys have got this, and I'd be delighted to help in any way. But I do have this, so we're going to put my slides up. There you go. So I'm very excited about being here. In part, I did write this book. It's called Reclaiming Your Community. You don't have to move out of your neighborhood to live in a better one. And it is, in fact, a national bestseller, which I'm very excited about, mostly because people are actually using, thank you very much, the lessons and the values that are embedded in the book itself. And so what I did with the book is I put my my glossary up front because I really wanted people to understand what I was talking about as I talked. And basically one of the main things I use is a term called low status and low status communities in particular. So these are the communities that are generally referred to as poor, low income, disadvantaged, or underprivileged, but we use low status because status implies that something larger is at work. There's a higher status, there's a lower status, and most importantly, that inequality is assumed. And these are the places where the schools, public health, air and water, parks and trees, food options, career options are worse there in those low status communities than in the higher status ones. And think of the communities like this wherever you are in the mid-Ohio region. And they could be inner cities, they could be suburban areas, they could even be Native American reservations when you move out of here. And they're suburban and they're rural, right? And they're all over the world. And what really happens in them is that the bright kids that are growing up in those areas are expected to measure success by how far they get away from those neighborhoods in particular. And they're the places where inequality is so assumed by those that live in those neighborhoods, but also those that are on the outside looking in, and maybe even the people who are considered the supporters of them. And so this talk is about our talent retention approach to community development. And now we all know that successful companies, they don't spend their time, their money, their resources pouring them into, their employees and their talent so that their competition can hire them away. But in American low-status communities, but in those communities, billions and billions of dollars, government, philanthropic, private dollars are spent in those neighborhoods, allegedly to support the people in them, but what we see is the outcomes generally don't get a whole lot better. And those that are supported, whether it's through gifted and talented programs, athletic or artistic, supportive pursuits, we often don't expect them to stay in those neighborhoods, and often they don't. And we don't because we're not doing much to retain the talent to make sure that those communities are things they want to be in. But we believe that talent retention strategies like those used to grow successful companies can be used to build great neighborhoods that for the people that are born and raised in them and who want to stay. My hometown is the South Bronx and in New York City, and one could say that it's the kind of neighborhood that might have had a talent repulsion strategy. So this is the South Bronx that I grew up in. That was a crack house that I walked by. This was during the 1970s, that we saw pretty much every day. And believe me, this was on my way to the subway that took me to one of the best high schools in the country called the Bronx High School of Science. And that path was just like, that's my ticket out, using education to get out. This was a very different community than the kind that my parents moved to back in the early 1940s. My parents were part of that great migration. Daddy was from Georgia, my mom from South Carolina. They were both of them, looking like so many, black folks from the South looking for their great American dream, and fleeing domestic terrorism. People from down south and then also the Caribbean, black and brown folks started moving up again, all looking for their dream. White flight happened. The highway construction boom happens obviously all over the country, but it literally, in the Bronx, it served to build highways between wealthier, whiter communities up north and to get them into Manhattan in the south, displacing tons of people along the way. Redlining literally created, the financial disinvestment really happened very distinctly in this community. So by the time, I was born, much of the financial ability for folks to get mortgages and stuff were just gone. And it included the businesses in those communities, wherein we used to be a walk-to-work neighborhood, and there were things like, small businesses, light manufacturing in particular in those communities. Like we had so much like a certain type of steel construction and manufacture that we were called Little Pittsburgh. All of that was gone by the time I was born, and what took its place was the kind of like environmentally burdened waste infrastructure, and whether it was waste or energy production, sewage sludge pelletizing. This was all like literally within pretty much 1 square mile. Much of it was for the New York City proper. Oh, and yeah, and that's literally around the time that I came in. And I like to think of this as like a networking opportunity for me when I was really young, talking to Santa Claus, which I definitely was talking to Santa Claus, because I was there with the Easter Bunny, and the Easter Bunny said, "I've been a good girl, so hook me up." But this is what I grew up with, the financial disinvestment that we experienced. Literally, it was coupled with the fact that there was most of the buildings in that area were built around the 1910s, 20s, something around that. So there was that, and then you add the fact that landlords were not getting any money. They couldn't get a mortgage, they couldn't get financing to upkeep them, and so some of them were literally paying arsonists to burn their buildings down. We lost about 60% of the population, mostly because we lost much of the housing stock during that time. And it was just literally, it felt like a war zone, like after the bombings had happened, walking through things like this. But what was really interesting about this, even though, and I'm not saying that it was like a perfect time to be alive in my neighborhood, it absolutely was not in many cases. There were drug wars in our community. There was, my brother, unfortunately, was the victim of one of them. I've saw, people who actually, got hooked on stuff, and it was just really, really bad. But there was also, honestly, it was a great community for people who were still there. Like many of the folks, especially those of us that owned homes, you couldn't sell them. No one wanted to buy them. So guess what? We had to be a community together, and we were. So I knew that there were people in my neighborhood who loved me and who went to work every single day and who were working as hard as they could to make our neighborhood feel good for those of us that were there. And it was a really powerful thing. But the thing is, when I heard the nightly news, all I heard was about these neighborhoods. The South Bronx was literally the poster child for urban blight. Nobody's there except for pimps and pushers or prostitutes. And I knew that wasn't true either. But it still didn't make me feel like I wanted to stay there. But it's very much the same now. It's like we are a community that has lots of wonderful people. It's like every community, everywhere, we do. But again, if we listen to the way the media presents low-status communities in particular, it's as if they've got nothing to offer, not even, let alone to the world or even to themselves. And we kind of internalize that in some ways. But guess what? These are folks in my neighborhood right now, and some of them are daycare providers, they're entrepreneurs, they're filmmakers, they're writers, they're medical professors. They're actually professors as well. Hello. And for example, the woman in the Cozy with my Rosé T-shirt she combined her two favorite loves, which is wine and reading, and she opened a fabulously successful lit bar, as in lit like literature and lit like tipsy, and it's really, really cool. And she's my homegirl from across the street, and we also, because we are the South Bronx, and it's just like we are culturally, there's so much there to offer. We have Marcus Samuelson for the foodies in the house, who'll come up and chat with us about all sorts of stuff. We consulted with us on the project. The young man in the middle, if you've got kids who are now 18 or so, back in the day, there was a Netflix series called 13 Reasons Why. Then he played Tony Romero, and that was like his breakout role. And now he's like a really fabulous working actor in Hollywood. It's very cute. But his family's from right up the street from mine, so he's really kind of fun. So I got my work started when I actually had to come back home because I was broke and needed a cheap place to stay. I got very involved in the environmental, activism that was there, and really worked to do a lot of green infrastructure projects to really create, people feeling like there was like a beautiful place for them to be in. So I developed, some parks and greenway infrastructure, and I'm really, really proud of all that. But it also led me to the place where I really wanted to think about more about how, basically. Making the environment, broadening our idea of what the environment was. And so I moved into urban revitalization strategies and real estate development. And part of one of the first things that we did was ask people, what do you think about the community that you're in, and what would make this place the kind of place you'd want to stay in? And so one of the main folks that we asked, or groups of people that we asked, were actually high school seniors, because at the time, we had more kids graduating from high school and going on to college than we'd had in the previous 30 years. So as a neighborhood, we were all real excited about that, and it was just a clear example of like, these kids are our future, like how about we talk to them? And so we did. And so one of the things that we asked them was just like, so what do you think the neighborhood needs now? And they would almost like, it was just like a list that they'd go down. We need more affordable housing for very poor people. They made that distinction. And homeless shelters too, because that's where a bunch of them are gonna end up anyway. We need more health clinics because everybody's sick with some kind of like heart disease or diabetes or obesity, something like along those lines. And we need more community centers for the kids, which was funny because they were talking about young people that weren't much younger than they were, but they felt that this would keep them off the streets. And then we'd ask them, okay, so great. So are you planning on coming back, here after you, graduate high school and go to college? And they were just like, and they would look at, honestly, the way that only teenagers can look at an adult when they think they're like totally crazy. But they were just made it really clear. They were like, no, like, why would I do that? Like, I'm gonna graduate, go to college, do some really good stuff in my life. So why would I come back and like subject myself to this neighborhood? Because to them, what they were really doing, honestly, was they were responding to the perception of what I think the nonprofit industrial complex, and the impact on their community and what they've been, the perception of what has been told. And so I think the nonprofit industrial complex is the way we refer to it, as the collection of both philanthropic and corporate funders. And it's supported, by the actions, of government and other organizations, and they essentially survive because they're managing the poverty, and the issues that are prevalent in low status communities. But I don't believe that there's ever really an issue to think that they're ever really going to be solved. So again, the focus seems to be on management of those issues. And so these kids were responding to that, so they're thinking of themselves as like something that's going to be cool. So that cool don't live here. It certainly doesn't stay here. And so that's what they were thinking. And I want to be clear, it's obviously not all organizations are maniacally trying, to continue to produce inequality and to just manage poverty, because obviously there's plenty that are out there that are doing the right thing. But ultimately, as an industrial complex, I do think the system exists to perpetuate itself, not necessarily to completely, dismantle the kind of problems that we really do need to be dismantling. And so when we did a little bit more focus groups and surveys to really understand what was making people feel like they didn't have to move out of their neighborhood to live in a better one. We got it was hundreds and hundreds of surveys, hundreds of focus groups, et cetera. I mean, it was a lot. But so we didn't ask them, so do you think poverty is a cultural attribute? That's something that's like in our DNA or something like that? It was no, it was more like, what are you looking for in the community that you desire? Where do you go and spend your money when you think about what is going to make you feel good about where you are? And guess what? None of the things they mentioned were the things that were prevalent in our own community. It was they would talk about where they would go, where they would spend their money. It was cafes and bars. They even had to go out to find the housing that matched their income because, again, the perception is that everybody's poor. But, lots of parents did great raising up their kids. Many of them did go to school. Many of them did get careers. But they couldn't, no one was trying to build housing that matched their income, even if they wanted to stay close to their families. And that's just what was happening. So doing that, we realized that we wanted to respond to the fact that poverty is not our cultural attribute. It's nobody's. It's a state that happens to people based on the situations that they're in and often the policies that are applied to them. And so what we really thought about is but we discovered that kind of attitude was literally creating, the fact that there's only two kinds of real estate development in low status communities. One, we know that the gentrification displacement that goes, along part and parcel, rich developers come in and they, end up pushing out the poor folks. And I know that I'm oversimplifying it, but basically that's what most people think. And the other kind is one we call poverty level economic maintenance. And you see it, and you're in a low status community when can you find like many diverse options for food? whether it's supermarkets, whether it's decent places to sit down and eat, or is it just the fast food joints, and the little chicken spots and stuff like that? Are there places, you can find places to spend your money, your hard-earned cash, local economic developments, and maybe they're not local, but often they're poor quality, and they make you wish that you could go shop someplace else. Bargains are fine and great, we love them, but you're in a low-status community when you see dollar stores as your main retail option. Pharmacies and health clinics, both privately owned ones that actually get subsidies from the feds, are huge. I mean, just like the portion of their balance sheet from low-status communities that are managing, and I do really believe that they manage many of the kind of issues from diabetes and obesity that actually could be dealt with through like a better environment within the people where their communities are living in. But we see that, and again, somebody's making lots of money off of this. And we've got plenty of ways to get self-medicated in our communities. You'd see plenty of now smoke shops are like all over the place as well. If you want to invest or save your money, finding banks and credit unions or even investment clubs, hard to do in low-status neighborhoods. But you will find many places that will certainly charge you a premium on using your own money. At check cashing stores, pawn shops, payday loan centers, rent-a-centers. Last, definitely not least, the presence of very high quantities of subsidized affordable housing. And is affordable housing needed? Yeah, all sorts of affordable housing is needed for like a range of incomes. But what we find in places, low status communities, when it's just for the lowest income band, what we see is that when you combine all these things, literally, you also exacerbate the low health outcomes, low educational attainment, higher rates of folks being involved in the justice system, and even more incidences of police brutality and issues around that as well. And you also see just like a general sense of lack of hope. And you combine all those things together, and then you look at what's happening, but understand, it's poverty, it is an economic poverty that's being maintained, but it's also businesses that are being supported as a result of it. But it's not supporting the people on the ground. So, and I think that, we don't believe that things like that poverty levels stay what they are just because, or that even gentrification happens, when you start seeing, kind of coffee shops and bars and restaurants and things that you have not seen in those same neighborhoods. We really believe that it happens, and even like the lack of hope that comes in staying in a low status community comes when people don't see value in their own homes. And we see it in home ownership in particular, because when people own their own homes, but they're approached for fast cash offers by predatory speculators, it's mostly, and they'll sell quick, it's because we don't see the future value in our own homes and in our communities such as they are. And that's why folks will decide to sell early and cheap. And we've seen it happen time and time again over this entire country. And these are just examples of the ones that I've actually received underneath my door. Now they've got my phone, and so they call that a lot too, and assuming that I don't know the value. This is one of my favorite responses to this issue that we do. We see these predatory speculators will put up the "we'll buy your house for cash" signs, and we'll just rip them down. And because it's just, I think, too much of a temptation for folks. But this response was from, a colleague in Baltimore who wrote that just said, yeah, I have my kids, little kids, call these predators and say, get away from my inheritance. Please stop calling. But the thing is, like, you've got to see the value of it. And if you don't see the value in your community, and we're led to believe there is no value in low status communities, that's why we will measure our success while we get away from them. So the talent retention strategy, it's all about seeing the beautiful things that make you feel good about where you are. So you've got to have a beautiful, high-quality built as well as natural environment. So bringing those things together, having a commercially viable, year-round social spaces, third spaces that are neither work nor home. So those are the cafes and the bars and the places that people can hang out in, and the things that promote community center, like a community feel, without necessarily feeling like a community center that a less than great developer will build into in the back without windows, in a development so they can add more FAR. Like, that's not what we're talking about. But this is more like what makes you feel great about being out and about in your neighborhood. And creating more opportunities for home ownership, local jobs, as well as business opportunities for people within those communities. And it does not conflate poverty as part of our culture. It's just not. You want it to make you feel really good about where you are. So remember this crack house. This was a crack house. Now, one of our first projects was to actually create a new development called the Boogie Down Grind, a cafe, and it's a classic hip-hop themed coffee shop. And so those of you that don't know, the South Bronx is the birthplace of hip-hop. You are all welcome. And Boogie Down is another name for the South Bronx. So, of course, and we just grind, because we just do. So we did this place because we have not had a social gathering space, in our community since I was in high school, when the last really nice, old school delicatessen closed. So to build this place out, so that people can come and be their best selves, whether it was, to participate or just watch an open mic or a book reading or just come and meet a friend for coffee, to do some fun stuff like that, to do photo shoots, just whatever people wanted to see was just this super exciting, have this kind of place, because really the biggest open space in our neighborhood at that point, on our commercial strip was the inside of pharmacies or health clinics. Again, why you want to be hanging out in the pharmacy? Nobody does. People don't do that. They want to be seen in cool places that make them feel good about where they are. But what's fascinating about this is that still, what we often thought, because we think we internalize this idea that our communities will never be anything. But you know what? For those of us who feel stuck, and who don't feel as though we can have the imagination to think about our communities being anything except what other folks have told us how bad they are, will think that, but it's all I got. And so I can't, because it is going to get gentrified. And so there are definitely some folks who felt that this cafe, was certainly the first harbinger of the shot off the bow of gentrification coming to the neighborhood. And so we had to deal with that. At one point we were protested, by some folks who felt that way and who were very vocal in their protests, and with a big, bullhorns, and this is a sign says Majora Carter sells out the Bronx, one coffee at a time. Didn't matter that my family's been in the neighborhood since the 1940s, but to them it was just the image of a coffee shop was just not what we needed, in our community. But what was fascinating about all of that, I know it's sort of crazy, but yeah, I put little smiley faces on it to protect, people, but what else could I do? But what was so, ironic about that whole experience was that we were, so that same day we were protested was the day that we were offering a workshop with some community lenders who were offering 0% interest loans for local homeowners to make sure they could stay in their homes. And small business owners who could use that kind of influx of capital. But again, if you don't feel as though there's anything of value, nothing anybody says is going to help you. But fortunately for us, the next day, and if any of you have ever been protested, it's not fun. But I have to tell you, and I did worry about, were we going to even be able to stay open? What are folks going to think? But the next day we had, up until that day, the best day of revenues we've had at that cafe. Because everybody in the neighborhood at that point was just that's just not smart. This is a value add for our neighborhood, and people supported us that way. So I felt really good about all that. So that was great. So this is another one of our projects, and I'm very happy about right now. This is an old, historic rail station built in 1910 by a great Midwest architect named Cass Gilbert, who did the Woolworth Building and the U.S. Supreme Court Building. He did these little rail stations because rich people wanted to put their names on it. And so this was in Hunts Point, and was really kind of fun. But it was closed down to rail service, back in the very late 30s, and was supposed to open, but it did not. But anyway, soon after, it was split into little mini storefronts, and and that's the way it would function for a really long time. The owner of the ground lease died after they had already had they just signed a lease for 30 years, another 30 years. But we were able to acquire that building, and we did this, had some young people from the neighborhood, design a mural on it and paint it really quickly, so it just looked like, a nice fresh surface because it was literally the gateway into the community. So it was important to make it look a lot more lively than it did. But now we're working on, we're almost finished with the financing of getting it together so that we can transform it into an event hall. And we've actually been, once we did the initial demolition, we started working on, opening it up that way. So we've had, we call it Bronxlandia, and it's been a really just a super beautiful asset, for the community. Everything from pop-up shops, or if you're of a certain age, they're called flea markets. I was like, what is that? They were like, oh, it's a flea market, Majora, you're good. I was like, all right, thank you. Video and photo shoots, lots of, plenty of them. So Malik Yoba, who's a Bronx-born actor, but has also been turned into a real estate developer, and he's also doing videos and films about real estate development, because that's like his new passion. And he created a series called I Build New York with a focus on Black and brown developers and how they're getting it. And so I was actually in the very first episode. So we screened, the world's premiere of that was actually at Bronxlandia back in the day, which was super fun. And but to have a space like this in the neighborhood, so that folks can, both be presenters and also be presented to through the performances and book and TEDx's and all sorts of things that are there. Now Tarana Burke is when she dropped her second book, she did it at Bronxlandia, so that was fun. Pro wrestling, which was actually one of the coolest things we ever did there. But then my insurance guy was just like, you can't do that anymore. And I was like, that was really sucky, but it was amazing. So now we're working with Studio V architects, love them to pieces, and we're going to be restoring like as much of it as we can, but ultimately it's just going to be an event hall. And we're going to be using it as an opportunity also to give folks within our own community the opportunity to invest in it. So through a crowdfunding investment platform, it'll be a part of our capital stack, a community investment practice, which I'm super excited about seeing that happen. But it's really, honestly, there's a real reason why I was even born and standing in front of you is because of my dad, who was a Pullman porter. And the reason why he chose the Hunts Point section of the Bronx to make his big move from the Great Migration here was because that was his line. And he was hoping and praying that the rail station would reopen, because he won $15,000 in a horse race and carried that cash back from California in a satchel that did not leave his side, obviously. And he found an Italian family on Moneta Street in Hunts Point who were willing to sell to that great big old beautiful black man. And that is how 6 of my 10 brothers and sisters were raised in that house, so as a result of it. So I thank you, Daddy. I think bless you for that. His very last job was at this place, which was a really horrible spot. It was a juvenile detention facility called Spofford, and it was literally around the corner from the house I grew up in. And I remember, I knew it was awful because I remember my dad saying things like how he wished that our house was bigger so that we could take more kids in, because that was a time in the history of juvenile justice, which was never good, but it was really bad back then, where if kids were in a home that parents were arrested in, they would often take the kids and just put them in jail. So it was, and believe me, we actually had some kids that stayed with us like that too. But to see that site, to see that when it was finally closed down, when I was just starting to reimagine what could development look like, and I looked down at that spot. It was empty at the time because thank God for children's AIDS advocates and prison reform folks who knew that was not the way to treat kids or anybody. And it was closed, and I was like, that 5-acre plot of land, that's where we can do the kind of mixed income housing, mixed use commercial development that could create the kind of economic diversity that could work for all of us and really create something. And I got to work, called everybody that I knew in from architects and planners to literally go to think about what that site could be, and looking at it from program uses, things for mixed income housing with including home ownership, and of course, inclusionary and supportive housing in it, manufacturing and education. We did a lot of work on what the economic growth trends could be, who could come into the community that would actually add value and jobs and other types of business opportunities for people within our own community. It also looking at open space and creating that as a really beautiful, denominator for how everybody can participate in great, well-designed open space, and we're all better for it. And of course, creating more just commercial and retail opportunities, because that's how you circulate dollars which stay in your community that allow your tax base to continue to grow as well. And also what I loved about this was that there's so many post-industrial American cities around, mine included, that I felt like this kind of model could work everywhere. And so where you've got a residential section on one side, and right next to it is your industrial section where it starts. And in that area where they meet, that's where it's sort of like almost like a no man's zoning place, right? Because not much happens there, and it really didn't happen here. But what people knew was that, because it was sort of a lonely place, is that people knew that truckers would go there to pick up a prostitute. So, but again, using that as an opportunity to create more value there was exactly what we were able to do. Or think about, where you'd have openings for 3 different, spaces, things like, entrances to light industrial areas, to apartments, to schools, et cetera, all that kind of stuff. Good uses will drive out bad uses. We wanted to use it as an opportunity to raise the bar for what passed for economic development in our community. And so we worked with one of the, actually several, women and Black-owned businesses, specifically all of us as equity partners on this project to consider a 1,200 unit mixed with that included some market rate houses, lots of different middle range, but in particular 100 units of low-income home ownership, and more than 80,000 square feet that was reserved for industrial, commercial, and all the good stuff that would create a minimum of about 800 jobs. And unfortunately, our city decided to not do that. They went specifically along the lines, of what they usually did. They worked with the same, 2 actually white male development teams, and they decided to build strictly a smaller, very low-income home ownership project. This is the one that won the bid. Rental project, but extremely low income, that was going to have a very large health clinic and also a big community center. And that was pretty much it. And it was a really difficult time, but I like to close it with this. This is Dr. King's letter from a Birmingham jail, and this idea that, look, you have to be impatient about the future of our communities and thinking about how we can plan for the kind of future that we want to be in. And look, I'm not saying that the talent retention approach, is going to solve all of our problems associated with poverty maintenance or displacement and gentrification, or right all the wrongs that's been going on, in low status communities. But I don't think we're going to be able to solve any of those problems without them, because ultimately what we want to do is we don't want to keep building the same way that we've done, that it literally that honors all the inequities that brought us to this day, but that instead we can create new opportunities to prove out the fact that we don't have to move out of our neighborhoods to live in a better one. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Michelle Crandall, Vice Chair, MORPC's Board of Commissioners. And again, I want to express our deep gratitude to Majora Carter for joining us today. I have no doubt her visionary advice and depth of experience have provided priceless insight to all of us as we continue on our growth journey here in this region. Majora, thank you so much. You're just an incredible community builder, and thank you for being here. Let's give her another round of applause. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our esteemed panel of state, regional, and local leaders who will share their insights on fostering a holistic transformation of housing and transportation. Join me in welcoming today and bringing up to the stage Jack Marchbanks, who's Director of Ohio Department of Transportation. Shannon Hardin, Council President, City of Columbus. Monica Tejas Fowler, who, if you look in your program, says Deputy Chief Executive Officer for CODA, but just earlier this week, it was announced that she is the CEO of CODA. And Luke Messinger, also newly appointed CEO of Rapid 5. And our moderator for this discussion will be our own William Murdoch. Their collective expertise and dedication to advancing our communities make them invaluable voices in this important conversation. William, the stage is yours.
Great. Well, let's go ahead and sit down. And wasn't Majora just fantastic? She was great. And when I think about this panel, we're talking about those things about making your communities ones that you want to continue to live in. The example of the high school students, I think, was really just, it hit you hard. Like, whoa, we have to plan for our youth. We have to pay it forward for our future. So we've got some major projects we want to highlight here before we finish today in transportation, in development, and look at this panel, and I just want to dive right into it. Let's start with Link Us. So this has been a years-long effort to reimagine mobility in the heart of our region. President Hardin is the president of Columbus City Council and a leader in these efforts. President Hardin, let's dive in. Simply put, what is Link Us?
Well, thank you, William, and let's give it up to William and MORPC for an amazing convening once again. MORPC has brought us together as a community to move this important conversation forward. I was thinking as Majora was speaking about my grandmother who lived at 271 Lexington Avenue and on the Near East Side, a beautiful big brick home where back then everybody in the family lived there, lived together. I would love to go over and point that house out to you, but when the last time our community saw a big movement in growth in the country, in our community, and needed to build I-71, they tore down that house, along with many other, nearly 500 Black families' homes when we built I-71. We are facing another moment of growth in our community. We all know, we just saw in the dispatch yesterday that our year-over-year growth was one of the fastest in the country. We're going to add the 500,000 to 1 million people to our region. And so, simply put, Link Us is our region's growth and mobility initiative and strategy that allows us to be as intentional about including people as our forefathers were in excluding people in our future. And it's a really big deal. I call it the grand experiment. The grand experiment is, can we get bigger? Not that we just are going to get bigger, but can we get better as we get bigger? That's the grand experiment, because not too many other communities have done this well. And how will Link Us do that? It will help us bring dignity to mobility. So, and that not just if you have a car. So it will allow you to get to work and get connected and get home and get to the daycare and do so in a reasonable amount of time, because you'll have reliability in your transit and in the time in which it will take. It'll allow us to bring everybody along by building more housing and density along a fixed corridor, so that as we grow and as we bring in this new 1 million people, that we're able to build the housing to keep costs down as we and allow folks who work in our community to actually live in our community. It will help keep our community safer and cleaner with less emissions, because it will allow for nearly 500 miles of extra sidewalks and greenways and trails and protected bikeways. So this literally is our region's plan to grow better as we grow bigger.
Oh, that's so well said, President Hardin. And Monica, we're excited for you to be in your public debut as CODA's new CEO. So let's dive a little deeper. CODA is such a visionary leader and partner in this. Can you tell us a little bit more about what the region will see?
Yeah, well, as Council President Hardin mentioned, it's a comprehensive transportation and mobility plan that's meant to kind of address the growth, the affordability, and the opportunity within the region. So what we're looking at is adding at least 5 additional BRT lines and improving the CODA's existing service as is. So what that means, we are currently in the process, planning process of 3 corridors that have been identified and named West Broad, East Main, and Northwest. And shortly, we'll see soon 2 additional corridors that will be named. It also means improvements to our service. That means ultimately what we're going to see is 45% increase of transit in the region. That's huge. It can look like some 24-hour lines, better connections, but also expanded and more CODA Plus on-demand service zones. It also is going to be transit supportive infrastructure. What that means is we're going to put in approximately $60 million a year into transit supportive infrastructure. That includes things like sidewalks, bikeways, trails, all with the intention of creating safer neighborhoods, more connected, better bikeways, and making it more walkable and bikeable.
And those monies will go to all communities.
And those will be in every community. That's right. You'll see it throughout the CODA service area.
We actually counted those yesterday. 43 communities will be touched by LinkUs.
Yes.
It's really incredible. So LinkUs is economic development, housing, transportation, and let's take it out a little bit because the state is doing an incredible plan called the Strategic Transportation and Development Analysis. And Director Marchbanks, we are so honored to have you here as a longtime partner and friend. What is this and what does it mean for Central Ohio?
Well, it means that what we are pursuing at the Ohio Department of Transportation through the leadership of Governor Mike DeWine and the support of the legislature is a study that will look at how do we not only sustain this fantastic economic growth we have here in the Central Ohio region, but how do we, actually build upon it. And build upon it in terms of linking this Central Ohio region to the entire state. What we're looking at here is 10, 20, 30 years out in regards to where do we make strategic transportation infrastructure investments that will benefit the access, mobility, and prosperity of all Ohioans, and all modes are on the table. We're getting at this in many ways. Of course, we have a top-notch consulting team on board, and we're doing all the things that MORPC and other folks that we do the modeling, we do all the economic analysis. But what we're looking at is where the demographic shifts and developments are taking place within Ohio and understanding the implications of transportation infrastructure and assessing how our investments will impact upon these. Finally, we're considering strategies that will best support Ohio, both state and local governments, in seizing opportunities and overcoming economic challenges. We want all Ohioans to prosper. One of the things that we're excited about is our listening sessions. We've been doing listening sessions for the last several months, and some of the things that are coming out of our listening sessions are some really great observations from people, local governments, local officials, citizens, and those business leaders. We're looking at the themes that have emerged thus far: quality places, ensuring that our cities and towns are not only growing, but are places where people want to live; market connections, improving those market connections for the prosperity of our state; site development for those businesses that are looking at locating in our state; workforce access. Our critical issue here in Ohio is that we have a good problem. The problem is that we're growing economically, and we need workforce. So workforce asset access is critical. And the business and logistics efficiency, we're a logistics state. Ohio is the heart of it all. We're 600 miles from most of the United States, so we want to make sure that we build upon that. The good news is that we are making strong progress and that we will have our study done by the end of this year.
Wow. So we aren't kidding when we say this is the year. LinkUs is on the ballot. This study's going to be done. And to bring us connected to nature, Rapid 5 has had this vision to create the nation's largest interconnected greenway and create a land trust. And in his public debut, we have Luke Messinger, who's their new CEO. Luke, tell us a little more about this vision and where Rapid 5 is going.
Well, so many studies have taken place throughout the years that talk about the importance of green space to our health and well-being. This is a great opportunity, especially with the projections of population growth in Central Ohio, is to take advantage of the natural resources that are already here. The 5 major waterways, a lot of the green space that we have, the communities that have done great works with parks and open green space. Creating an opportunity for livability in these areas with housing expansions and so forth is crucial. We have to have the green space there for that. We have to define what that green space is, and we also have to be able to create an atmosphere where that happens. It's part of the conversation of the comprehensive look and planning for making Columbus and the Central Ohio region a very livable area. Key to that is that Rapid 5 is going to be establishing a land trust that's going to take advantage of some of the accessible lands that are in natural areas to provide access to help facilitate some of this connectivity. So we look forward to starting this land trust here real soon. It's up in the planning and operational standpoint is just getting ready for that. And I'm also looking forward to re-engaging with many of the communities that are present here to talk about how Rapid 5 can be a convener for your communities and the development of green space.
Yeah. So this is so exciting. When you think about connecting communities, these all knit together. Every community in the region is going to benefit from this. And if we had more time, we would dive into connections to rural transit. We would talk about how our highway infrastructure needs to support us. But I want to finish here by asking each of you, reflecting on Majora's wonderful keynote, the survey, all of these big things going on, what is one thing you think the leaders in this room need to take away from the luncheon today? And Luke, we'll go ahead and start with you.
I think really coming up with what does green space look like and how much it can contribute to a livability of a neighborhood. It's key, it's important. Today, most children sit relatively motionless all day long. We have to think about the opportunities for people to get outside. We have to provide access, and we have to provide that green space for them to do that.
Thanks, Luke. And Director?
Yes, William. My one thing would be to ask every leader here to do something in the next year that will actually improve mobility options for someone not just, large scale, but small scale. We have to have different modes of moving people around to opportunity and to healthcare options.
Yeah, love that. Monica?
I would ask everyone to lift up the Link Us in Mobility Initiative, because I think that that has a lot of ETOD in it that will address some of our affordability housing in the future, as well as help us manage through adding approximately 1 million people in the next 30 years. So it has big implications.
Yeah, very.
William, look, when we look back on this year, we will know that this was the year that we decided what kind of community that we wanted our children to grow up in, that we decided to manage growth, to focus growth, to do it in a way that serves all of us. We would do that by supporting Link Us and making sure that we can all move around, house our people here. We will also do that. One of the things that is not being talked about that much is also council in the city of Columbus is undertaking a historic 70-year in the making zoning reform that will also help us to build out the housing that we need, help us to solve our homelessness issue. I'm looking at Shannon Isom and the Community Shelter Board. This will be the year that we make the decision because we have the choice. This is all about choices, y'all. This is all about choices. This is our year to make the choice about what kind of community that we want our children to grow up in.
Don't you feel great having these leaders charging ahead with these major initiatives? We need to rally around them. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you. Awesome. Told you to be quick. Great. Thank you. Thank you, Director. Thank you, Luke. Yeah.
I just want to thank you for the grant as well.
Go ahead. All right, and now to close today's event, we have a chance to honor some really incredible projects and leaders through the State of the Region Awards. In just the next 5 minutes here, we're going to continue that tradition of honoring these individuals and collaborative achievements in our region. These awards recognize leaders who have a legacy of impact And what I want to do is I have the pleasure to welcome the award presenters to the stage. Joe Stefanoff of the City of New Albany, a member of MORPC's Executive Committee and a previous William H. Anderson Award winner. Bob Weiler, well known to so many of us as a friend and inspiration, longtime community and business leader through Central Ohio. And Kenny McDonald, who leads the Columbus Partnership and whose team at One Columbus won last year's Collaborative Award recipient. Let's begin the award ceremonies and welcome them up to the stage.
Thank you, William. Today's conversations around the future of our region have been incredible. As the city manager of New Albany, I am honored to present the William H. Anderson Excellence in Public Service Award. This award recognizes a current or past MORPC board member who has made a significant contribution to MORPC, the community, and the region. William H. Anderson, a longtime MORPC board member, was the epitome of what it means to be a civic volunteer. We remember him for the zeal with which he championed MORPC's mission and goals. This year's award recipient is Franklin Chrisman, Administrator of the Village of Asheville. Please join me in congratulating Franklin Chrisman.
Franklin stands out with his long service to Asheville, Pickaway County, MORPC, and more. He's somebody who knows the value of partnerships and collaboration and how that broader perspective and new resources can strengthen a community.
You know, there's been a lot of growth and change in Asheville over Franklin's tenure there, and he really understands the planning process, and he understands what happens from inception to fulfillment. And having that knowledge base in the work that we do at MORPC is very valuable.
As I look back and I say, Franklin, what have I learned from you more than anything else? And I think it's probably how to attain results through positive actions.
Franklin's leadership in Corpo has been particularly evident. Corpo is our Central Ohio Rural Planning Organization, and he has made great strides in ensuring that there is accessibility for all people.
If you go to Asheville, people know that. They respect him and his life of service. He knows that village inside out, and he's been creative with economic development, big infrastructure projects. He's developed new partnerships to help the village navigate growth, all while staying true to its character and its values. And with his background in history, Franklin is very proud to show you the world's oldest working traffic light and tell you all about Asheville's story at Ohio's Small Town Museum.
So Franklin, I want to thank you for what you did for the village of Asheville, what you did for Harrison Township, Pickaway County, the city of Circleville, but more importantly, really what you've done for me.
You know, one of the things I'm going to miss about Franklin the most is the smile that's on his face every time he sees you and the way he greets you. You know that you are going to get a warm greeting because he sincerely cares about all of the folks that call this region home. So we will miss his wisdom, we will miss his wit, and certainly we'll miss his smile.
Well, congratulations, Administrator Chrisman. We're very proud of you. I'm Bob Weiler, Chairman of the Robert Weiler Company, and today I am greatly honored to announce the recipient of the 2024 Regional Leadership Award, which recognizes individuals in our 15-county region who make extraordinary efforts to support a better future for our communities. This award represents MORPC's dedication to addressing issues that go beyond community boundaries and that embrace visionary thinking. This year's award recipient is a true visionary, one who many of you already know is President and CEO of the Affordable Housing Trust for Columbus and Franklin County. Yes, Lark Mallory. Please join me in congratulating Lark as she comes to the
striving
stage.
for progress and inclusivity, some individuals stand out for their exceptional dedication to community well-being. Lark Mallory is one such leader. Under her innovative leadership as president and CEO of the Affordable Housing Trust, they've made remarkable progress to address the critical need for housing in Central Ohio, striving to ensure that everyone has a safe and affordable place to call home. Lark brings insight and creative expertise to complex situations, driving successful projects and elevating the Affordable Housing Trust's regional impact with new major initiatives. Her efforts have led to a new and groundbreaking $100 million regional impact fund to spur new housing across 7 Central Ohio counties. In collaboration with key investors, this work provides access to housing beyond Franklin County, impacting the lives of thousands across our region. And she launched the Emerging Developers Accelerator Program to build a developers pipeline, particularly women and people of color, combining investment with entrepreneurship across the community. Beyond affordable housing, her commitment to improving the quality of life in Central Ohio is evident. From her work with the Columbus Zoo and Aquarium to River South and more, she brings a unique blend of skills to her work and an unparalleled passion. Lark Mallory, a visionary leader shaping the future of our region, one home at a time.
Before we do this last award, it hasn't been said today, and I know that they won't do it for themselves. Can we get a standing round of applause for MORPC and the unbelievably hard work that William and his staff do for this region? Congratulations to both Franklin and Lark, well-deserved. I'm Kenny McDonald, President and CEO of the Columbus Partnership, and today I have the privilege of presenting the William C. Habig Collaborative Achievement Award. This honor represents outstanding efforts in innovation in creating partnerships and sharing resources. The award symbolizes Bill Habig's dedication to collaboration. Bill served as MORPC's executive director for more than 3 decades, and he continues to serve the region as MORPC's board member representing Granville Township. This year, MORPC recognizes Framework, communities of Licking County and partners, which includes Bill Habig's very own Granville Townships. It's no surprise that the legacy of collaboration woven by Bill through his career persists, and that his work continues to exemplify the essence of cooperation in public service. Please join me in congratulating Framework and partners for their extraordinary work across Central Ohio.
It wasn't something that was initiated by a governmental entity. It wasn't something that was initiated by any particular business in the community. This was Sarah Wallace and the T.J. Evans Foundation exploring whether or not they could help fill a need.
A number of us got together and really started discussing how we might be able to be of help to the numerous jurisdictions that operate within Licking County. We have had a lot of growth in Licking County for quite some time, but the Intel announcement really got everybody's attention and gave us a sense of urgency in Licking County to make sure that we could do the things that we have some control over to help shape our future.
Transportation, education, conserving resources, developing the next generation of workforce, and using our land smart. That's what Framework was all about.
We all have a lot of pride in Licking County, and we want to make sure that as we go forward, we continue to function well as a community and do a beautiful job in having quality communities to live in. And that's what Framework is really designed to do, to give us the tools that our jurisdictions need in order to be able to make good decisions going forward.
I think one of the things that maybe makes Licking County special is we've had the team approach to development and growth. It's not, again, one entity trying to push this. As a community, we're working as a team to see what makes sense for Licking County, what will work here.
Licking County is going to have much more very rapid growth, not just because of Intel, but because of a lot of other companies that are coming and have been coming to Licking County. We just want to do it well and really have a community that functions well and with really quality of place.
I think that Licking County is unique in the philanthropic entities and individuals that we have. The framework process shows that with collaboration, with an open mind, with a willingness to be able to reach out not just to public individuals, private entities, but the general public at large. If you can do that successfully and see the process through, framework, I believe it is an excellent model of the type of planning document that any area of Central Ohio could produce.
This isn't just about Licking County, it's about the Metro and the Central Ohio region, because the workforce comes from all directions. The workforce is trained in a variety of places. Transportation ties it together. The resources are resources that we all enjoy. And going forward, it's part of the process. It's a tool in the toolbox, and we believe Framework was timed at the right time, and it's a tool that we all have available now as we think about the future of the region.
So those are some incredible individuals. Lark Mallory, Franklin Chrisman, and the Framework effort, so many communities involved. Let's give them one more round of applause. So here we are, we're at the very end. You have had incredible ideas given to you, incredible speakers. We've lifted up incredibly moving award winners and community projects. I want you to take this away as you leave here. We all need to rally together. Remember I told you to introduce yourself to your neighbor? Well, make sure you remember who they are. Get their business card on their way out. You're gonna need their help. We have huge projects to rally around so that if we really do want to grow better as we get bigger, we can make this happen. Thank you so much for being a part of this year's State of the Region. Have a great weekend and a happy St. Patrick's Day.